How do you feel?
Like I'm etch-a-sketched.
Season 3 of The Bear feels off. Very off. And it didn't take long getting into the first couple episodes for me to realize why. Essentially, it comes down to two things. One common sentiment I've seen a lot of people share, and one other that I haven't really seen mentioned yet. Before we get into these two core issues with the season, I think it's only fair to talk a little bit about the positives. This season is absolutely gorgeous as far as aesthetics go. The cinematography is beautiful, with stunning, creative shots that are not only pretty but also greatly expressive. And that's besides all the food shots the show is so popular for, which feel more colorful than ever and showcase an even wider range of food than ever before. The colors and lighting are also, as usual, very beautiful, and the acting is top-notch. The music is okay too, though I personally didn't like how overbearing it got in places. I felt like we didn't get much chance to enjoy the silence, and like every single moment had to be heavily emphasized with music. But that's just personal opinion, and it's a minor complaint in the general scheme of things. As far as presentation and visuals go, The Bear is probably the best it has ever been. But when it comes to substance, this season is sadly greatly lacking. The first major issue here, and the clearest and the most discussed, is that, simply put, in this season, nothing happens. Plot threads left unwrapped from last season just continue to dangle in our faces, unfolding slightly more without changing drastically, and never being solved. I won't be getting into spoilers, so excuse my vagueness, but throughout the course of the season, things stay exactly the same. There's no payoff to anything established in the last season or even in this one. The show just revels in beautiful montage sequences of characters just living, doing practically nothing. It shows you more of the day-to-day minutiae of these characters' lives and the ongoing work at the restaurant. And while this does give us a clearer eye into how these characters are doing and feeling and how they are, a lot of the time it's basically aimless. To be clear, these montages aren't useless. Tonally, they establish a lot and give you extra insight into the characters. But to me, they must be used sparingly in order to actually be effective. However, this season is practically all montages. We see them so often and so repetitively that they lose their value. It stops feeling like I'm getting a special inside look at these people's lives, but rather that I'm being forced to watch them again and again. Simply put, it just gets boring. It starts to feel overbearing, self-indulgent, and, to be honest, kind of pretentious at times. There's a perfect balance to things like these, and excessive repetition just felt like it cheapened their emotional impact and how personal these looks into the characters' lives were meant to feel. Ultimately, it felt like it was either filler to pad a wholly uneventful season, or self-indulgence that shows the showrunners kinda lost the plot and became too overly obsessed with their own work. Frankly, I don't know which is worse. Very rarely does anything happen in this season. It's a cycle of character montages and usually one-on-one dialogue repeated throughout it all. And the thing is, when they break this cycle and something actually happens, it's good. The moments of stress and anxiety are done expertly, as they always have been. Things flow well and the events are enjoyable to watch. But this is so rarely done that it's frustrating, especially when we're so used to the tense, constantly moving nature of the show. It just feels like too abrupt a pause. One other aspect of the show I've taken great issue with lies within the majority of scenes that aren't character montages, and that's the dialogue scenes. Several issues arise here. For one, more than ever before, the Bear's characters sound so alike. Though the actors do their best to create distinction, if you focus on the actual words, it feels like for the most part, most characters speak very, very similarly. You could argue that this is natural for a group of people who spend so much time together, but this extends beyond just the inner circle and includes people like Donna or Tiff, Richie's ex-wife. They all have a very similar vocabulary, speech patterns, and just an overall tone of voice, in a sense where it feels like these characters are all written by one person. And as I kept hearing them repeat the same words and phrases in the same way, that was all I could think about. Another aspect of the dialogue I disliked was how far it leaned into awkwardness. I think in an attempt to make dialogue more natural, more and more shows have begun to write stilted, awkward, human dialogue, which I really love. Shows like Succession do this very well. And over the past couple of seasons, this kind of dialogue was present in The Bear, and it felt reasonably natural. But in this season, it feels like they crank it up to 100. It feels like it's trying so hard to sound natural that it overdoes it. And every conversation turns to a stuttery, overly awkward mess with frequent heavy silences and long, dramatic, drawn-out stares. It just feels like too much. But besides that, my main issue with this season's dialogue, and subsequently the second big issue with the season overall, is something I haven't seen mentioned online, and that is the fact that season 3 of The Bear seems to fall into the common mistake of messing up the classic rule you've all heard a million times: show, don't tell. Things have never been clearer than this season. Characters who are supposedly terrible communicators, like Carmy, are more forward than they've ever been, even if the story would have you believe otherwise. Every conversation really puts the characters' hearts on their sleeves, and they express their thoughts, desires, and opinions about everything going on very regularly. The Bear doesn't leave any room for us as viewers to draw assumptions or conclusions about these characters ourselves, or to ever wonder anything. It doesn't pull us in with the mysteries and complexities of real human people. No, it just outright tells us all the time. Sometimes we have scenes like the character montages I previously mentioned, which let us guess how a character feels about something through their actions. It makes us wonder what's going through their heads, why they're behaving this way, and so on. But usually, so soon after, we get a dialogue scene where that character just outright ends up saying it all. Honestly, I don't think I'd have minded how uneventful this season was as much if not for this issue with telling and not showing. Some people online think this season was a nice little meditative pause where we can look at these characters and learn more about them in a personal, intimate way, and that it aims to advance them as characters. Maybe I wouldn't have minded that, even with nothing happening, had we been allowed to see these characters express themselves through actions, rather than through mostly straightforward dialogue. In a sense, that's why shit needs to happen. Because if it doesn't, then the only way you can explain your story is through expository, on-the-nose dialogue. You have no way to show instead of tell. Ultimately, I was incredibly disappointed with this season. Most of the time, it bore me endlessly, and I felt like I was just finishing it out of obligation and respect to the previous seasons, rather than genuine excitement. I clung to the rare instances where I saw something happening, where the show felt like the previous seasons with anxiety-packed moments and deeply complex characters that you have to actively question how they feel. I clung to those moments and really enjoyed them, but they were just so few and far between that it wasn't enough. Season 3 of The Bear didn't grip me. It didn't leave me wanting more. There's been a lot of talk about Season 3 and Season 4 being possibly shot back to back, which is supposed to explain why the season felt so fillery, and that Season 4 is where everything is meant to pay off. But I don't know, man. I don't think that really justifies things. I don't think you can be content having a season of a show that gets nowhere because you can say, oh, don't worry, things will start happening next season. It demands a lot of good faith from your audience, which admittedly for a show like The Bear, it has earned. But the core issue is that, to me, it felt like it mostly squandered that good faith with how much it focused on telling and not showing this season, which is why the eventlessness and the lack of a full plot came off overly detrimental. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of Season 3 of The Bear in the comments below, especially if you disagree. Tell me how you felt about it. I'd genuinely love to know. I appreciate you for sticking around. Goodbye and see you soon. Maybe.